What if I told you that the single most underrated advantage in building wealth, in mastering a craft, in living a meaningful life, is not brilliance, not luck, not even timing, but simply the ability to keep going when others have already stopped? It sounds almost too simple, right? Yet if you study the lives of the great investors, entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, and thinkers, one theme emerges again and again: the power of staying the course. Welcome to the long game. I'm Nathan, and today we're diving into a truth that's as old as human progress itself: endurance as strategy. Because while the world celebrates the bold leap, the dramatic pivot, the viral moment, what truly compounds over years and decades is not intensity, but consistency. Not the sprint, but the marathon. Let me start with an image you can hold in your mind. Picture two runners. The first explodes off the line, speed dazzling, everyone watching in awe. The second starts at a steady pace, not impressive, almost forgettable. But an hour later, the crowd has gone home, the cameras have turned away, and that steady runner is still moving, step by step, toward the finish line. The first runner burned out long ago. This is life. This is investing. This is building something lasting. The world remembers the one who finishes, not the one who started fast. The reason staying the course matters is that the world is designed to test you. Every long-term path, whether in money or mastery, has a valley of boredom, a season of doubt, a stretch where nothing seems to happen. And that's where most people quit. They start a business, it gets hard, and they pivot endlessly. They start investing, markets wobble, and they sell out. They begin learning a skill, excitement fades, and they walk away. But here's the paradox: the reward is always hidden just beyond that valley. The compounding effect, the magic everyone talks about, only reveals itself to those who keep going long enough. Think of Warren Buffett. People marvel at his net worth, but most don't realize that the overwhelming majority of his fortune was built after his 60th birthday. Why? Because he stayed invested. He didn't jump from one trend to another. He endured decades of market crashes, inflation scares, and doubters, yet he simply stayed the course. That's not stubbornness, that's strategy, because he knew time is the greatest lever in finance, and endurance is how you pull it. Or take the story of J.K. Rowling. Rejected by a dozen publishers, living on welfare, told again and again that her book idea was too long, too strange, too unrealistic. She could have quit after the 5th rejection or the 10th, but she stayed the course. And today, Harry Potter is a cultural phenomenon that reshaped publishing forever. Her endurance wasn't passive. It was active resistance against despair. Endurance doesn't mean blind repetition. It doesn't mean you never adapt. It means you have a clear North Star, a compass that keeps you aligned. So even when you adjust the sails, you don't abandon the journey. That's a crucial distinction. People confuse quitting with pivoting or endurance with stagnation, but the truth is, endurance is movement with direction. It's persistence with purpose. Imagine planting a bamboo tree. For years you water it and nothing happens above the soil. No shoots, no visible progress. People laugh at you saying you're wasting your time. But underground, unseen, roots are spreading deep, weaving a network of strength. And then one day, seemingly overnight, the bamboo shoots up meters high. But it wasn't overnight. It was years of invisible endurance. That's the nature of compounding in life. Your career, your investments, your relationships, they often look stagnant right before they explode in growth. And here's the question you need to ask yourself: will you stay the course long enough to see that moment? Because the truth is, most don't. Most abandon the bamboo just before it breaks the ground. Most sell the stock right before the rally, Most give up on the skill right before mastery clicks. And that's why endurance itself is a competitive advantage. Not because you're smarter, but because you simply outlast. Endurance, then, is not just a trait. It's a strategy in a world addicted to quick wins. It's your moat against competitors who are chasing shortcuts. It's your edge in a marketplace where everyone else is looking for hacks. And when you look back on your life, you'll realize that the things that mattered most, the friendships that lasted, the wealth that endured, the reputation that survived, were all built on staying the course. So as we begin this journey, I want you to hold this truth close. The long game isn't won by the fastest or even the most talented. It's won by those who can keep showing up when the applause has faded, when the spotlight has moved, when only discipline and conviction remain. That's endurance. That's strategy. That's the power of staying the course. And in the next part, we'll dig deeper into why this endurance edge is so rare, how psychology, culture, and even biology tempt us to abandon the path, and how you can resist so that you're still standing long after the noise has passed.
So, why is endurance so rare? If staying the course is such a powerful strategy, one that history, business, and human progress keep proving over and over, why don't more people use it? Why do so many abandon their path halfway? Why do we see constant quitting, constant chasing of the next big thing, constant switching lanes before momentum can even build? The first answer lies in our psychology. The human brain evolved for survival in environments where immediate results meant life or death. If you planted seeds in the ground, you couldn't wait years for a harvest. You needed something to eat today. If you hunted, you didn't patiently track for weeks. You looked for the closest prey. That instinct to favor short-term results is wired into us. We crave the quick hit of reward, the fast confirmation that what we're doing is working. But here's the paradox. In the modern world, the greatest rewards aren't immediate. They're deferred. Wealth, mastery, reputation, health, these are all built on compounding. And compounding demands endurance. The very thing our instincts resist. Now, add culture to the mix. We live in a society of instant gratification. Scroll through social media, and what do you see? Overnight successes, before and after transformations, quick hacks, 1 month to mastery, 3 weeks to 6 figures. We rarely see the 10 years of grinding, the endless hours of practice, the nights of doubt behind the scenes. The result? We start believing that progress should be immediate, visible, Instagram ready. And when it's not, we assume something's wrong. So we quit. We switch. We chase the next thing that promises speed. And in doing so, we rob ourselves of the very rewards that only endurance could have delivered. There's also biology. Your brain is fueled by dopamine, the chemical of motivation. But dopamine loves novelty. It spikes when you start something new, when you take on a fresh challenge, when you chase a new idea. That's why the first weeks of a project feel exciting. But dopamine fades as novelty fades. The grind sets in, boredom rises, and suddenly your brain whispers, "Quit. Try something new. It will feel better." Endurance is the art of ignoring that whisper. It's learning to find satisfaction not just in novelty, but in depth, in the slow, invisible progress that compounds quietly. So, how do you resist? How do you stay the course when everything in your psychology, your culture, and your biology tempts you to leave? It starts with clarity. You must know why you're on this path in the first place. If your reason is shallow, money for the sake of money, status for the sake of status, it won't sustain you through the valley of boredom. But if your reason is anchored in meaning, in building freedom, in serving others, in pursuing mastery, then endurance becomes possible. Purpose fuels persistence. Take the example of Jeff Bezos. When he started Amazon, he famously told investors that the company wouldn't be profitable for years. He stayed the course through dot-com crashes, through skepticism, through relentless pressure. Why? Because his vision wasn't short-term gain. It was building the everything store for the long game. That clarity allowed him to endure seasons where others would have quit. Or look at Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, almost 3 decades of lost freedom, isolation, and suffering. Yet he endured, not because prison was bearable. It wasn't, but because he anchored his endurance to a vision larger than himself, a free and equal South Africa. When your purpose is strong enough, endurance becomes strategy. Another tool is systems. Endurance isn't about raw willpower, it's about structure. If you rely only on discipline, you'll run out. But if you build systems, routines, habits, environments, then endurance becomes automatic. James Clear puts it well, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. If you want to endure, you need structures that make persistence the path of least resistance. Imagine you want to invest for decades. If you have to manually decide every month whether to invest, your willpower will fail when markets fall. But if you automate contributions, set up dollar-cost averaging, and remove emotion from the process, then endurance happens by design. You stay the course because the system carries you. The same applies to health. You don't rely on sheer willpower to eat clean for decades. You design your environment so the easy choice is the healthy one. That's endurance, made effortless. And then there's identity. Perhaps the most powerful lever of endurance is seeing yourself not as someone trying, but as someone who is. If you say, I'm trying to be an investor, then every setback feels like evidence you don't belong. But if you say, I am an investor, then the market crash is simply part of your identity. You endure because that's who you are. The same with being a writer, an athlete, a leader. Identity transforms endurance from effort to expression. Think about the Stoic philosophers. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." For him, endurance wasn't a tactic. It was identity. He was a Stoic. Therefore, he endured. And that perspective is timeless. So here's the hard truth. The reason endurance is rare isn't because it's impossible. It's because it's unnatural. It requires going against your wiring, against your culture, against your cravings. It demands clarity, systems, and identity. But that's also why it's such a powerful strategy, because if you can do it, you'll separate yourself from 95% of the world who quit too soon. And in the next part, we'll go one step further. We'll look at how endurance compounds, not just in money, but in skills, in relationships, in reputation, and why those who stay the course not only survive, but eventually thrive in ways that look effortless to everyone else. We'll explore the mechanics of how time rewards those who refuse to abandon the path. The question is, will you be one of them? Now let's explore the real treasure hidden inside endurance, the compounding that only reveals itself to those who refuse to quit. Because staying the course isn't just about survival. It's about building momentum that multiplies over time until what once felt small and fragile transforms into something unstoppable. Think first about money. Compounding interest is often called the eighth wonder of the world. Why? Because time is its multiplier and endurance is its engine. If you invest $10,000 at 10% annual growth, in 1 year you've earned $1,000. Not impressive, but in 20 years, that $10,000 has grown to nearly $67,000. And in 40 years, it becomes over $450,000. Nothing changed, except one thing. You stayed the course. You didn't panic in a crash, you didn't chase fads, you didn't interrupt the compounding. Endurance made the difference between small returns and life-changing wealth. But the same law applies far beyond finance. Skills compound too. At first, learning is slow and painful. Every chord on the guitar feels awkward. Every line of code confusing, every sentence in a new language exhausting. But if you endure, if you keep practicing long after the thrill of novelty fades, something incredible happens. Knowledge compounds, muscle memory strengthens, connections in your brain multiply, and suddenly you cross an invisible threshold where things that once felt impossible become effortless. The world calls it talent, but it wasn't talent. It was endurance compounded. Relationships follow the same rule. Trust is not built in a day. It's built through repeated acts of reliability, through showing up again and again. One conversation may not matter. One gesture may not matter. But endurance in kindness, in presence, in loyalty, over years creates bonds that cannot be broken. This is why old friendships feel so rich. They are compounded trust. This is why enduring marriages or partnerships feel sacred. They are compounded love. And then there's reputation. Reputation is not built on a single victory or one dazzling performance. It's built through endurance, through a long record of consistency. Think about Warren Buffett again. When he speaks, the world listens. Not because of one lucky investment, but because of 6 decades of staying the course, of aligning words with actions, of building credibility 1 year at a time. Or think of Serena Williams. Her greatness wasn't a single tournament, it was 23 Grand Slam titles stretched across decades. That's reputation born of endurance. Now, let's consider why endurance is also strategic in competition. In business, most rivals are eliminated not by your brilliance, but by their lack of stamina. They run out of cash, out of patience, out of conviction. The marketplace punishes those who cannot endure volatility, uncertainty, and boredom. But if you can stay the course, markets eventually shift in your favor. Think of Netflix. It started as a DVD rental service, mocked by Blockbuster.
But Netflix endured. It stayed on its path of innovation through years of doubt until one day the compounding of subscribers, data, and content turned it into a giant. Blockbuster didn't lose because it was stupid. It lost because it couldn't endure the changing tide. This is the hidden edge of endurance. It gives time a chance to do its work. And time, once it's on your side, is the greatest ally you'll ever have. In fact, staying the course transforms time from an enemy into an engine. At first, time feels cruel. It stretches the weight, it magnifies the doubt. But once compounding kicks in, time becomes your leverage. It accelerates growth in ways that look like magic. And to outsiders, it does look like magic. They'll call it luck, overnight success, a sudden breakthrough. But you'll know it was years of invisible endurance finally becoming visible. Here's the part most people miss. Endurance itself becomes easier the longer you practice it. The first 5 years are the hardest. The doubts are louder, the boredom heavier, the temptation to quit strongest. But once you've endured long enough to see compounding in action, your belief grows. You start to trust the process. You begin to identify as someone who stays the course. And from there, endurance stops being a burden. It becomes your natural rhythm. So, what can you do today to align with this truth? First, choose your paths wisely. Staying the course only works if the path itself is worthy. Staying the course in a dead end doesn't make you wise. It makes you trapped. So pick the trees worth watering, the skills worth mastering, the relationships worth investing in. Then, once you've chosen, commit fully. Remove the back doors, burn the escape boats, and decide, I will endure. That decision changes everything. Second, measure differently. If you judge progress by short-term results, you'll quit. But if you measure by consistency, by whether you stayed the course today, then you win daily. And those daily wins, strung together, become the compounding you're chasing. Third, endure boredom. The world tells you boredom is bad, but boredom is the signal that you're moving from shallow novelty into deep mastery. When things feel repetitive, remind yourself, this is the compounding zone. This is where roots grow, unseen but unstoppable. Finally, remember this. Endurance is not just about outlasting. It's about outgrowing. Because while others quit and restart, you keep building on top of yesterday's foundation. And that continuity, year after year, becomes unstoppable momentum. So as we close this episode, let me leave you with one thought. Staying the course is not glamorous, but it is transformative. It is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. It is how wealth multiplies, how mastery deepens, how meaning grows. And it is available to you if you choose it. This is the long game. I'm Nathan, and I'll remind you once more, the secret isn't speed, or brilliance, or even timing. The secret is endurance, because in the end, the one who stays the course wins.